When it comes to the black best friend trope, a black character is only there for a few minor reasons. They're there to listen, have an expositional conversation, be the all-knowing friend full of wisdom, or help the protagonist learn a lesson. Hell, they might even be magical. I know there are some white movies that are the exception to the rule, but they are very far and few in between. Coined in 2006 in a Los Angeles Times article, the black best friend trope is described as a character whose principal function is to support the heroine, often with sass, attitude, and a keen insight into relationships and life. A book titled Race Baiter: How the Media Wields Dangerous Worlds to Dividing Nations describes this trope even further. BBFs, or black best friends, generally have few storylines to call their own, existing mostly to help the show's lead character progress or connect with audiences. Viewers rarely see anything in these characters' lives outside of whatever affects the star. So there's usually no spouse, kids, significant others, or relatives outside of an occasional spotlight episode. It often means that they are the only regularly seen characters of color on the show altogether. To understand how this trope became so popular in media during the late 2000s, let's explore why. Due to the growth of the minority population in the US, television attempted and of course failed to keep up with this change. They wanted to include minorities within media, but they assumed that giving a person of color the lead role would be a death sentence. They decided the only way this idea would be feasible was to cast people of color as secondary characters. In Race Baiter, the book I mentioned earlier, the actress and writer Diane Farr said this: "The thing that is frightening in the aftermath of that is that how many scripts I have read that were clearly written about white people and white families, where afterwards the divorced husband, the food server at the local coffee shop, or the child who was clearly white before is just recast as a person of color." This notion that black characters and other people of color couldn't make a show successful in the main role, but they also needed to be included, left limited and repetitive roles for black people. Even though the term was coined in 2007, this trope has been going on since the very early years of cinema, which brings me to my victim for this video, Showgirls. Most people know the famous, or better yet, infamous movie Showgirls that was released in 1995. It stars Elizabeth Berkley, aka Jessie Spano from Saved by the Bell. And while this movie gets a lot of hate, I mean, don't get me wrong, it rightfully deserves it because of the extreme overacting and unnecessary sexual tension, but this movie is smarter than most people think. After watching the documentary You Don't Know Me, I realized that this movie was given way more thought than I had known. That's what makes this part even more frustrating. The creator put so much thought into the movie like this, but put so little effort into my girl, the one and only sacrificial lamb, Molly. I also decided to include James in my analysis because he is a black character and deserves the same attention. I want to note that this is strictly my opinion, and lastly, there will be spoilers and I will be talking about sexual assault, so trigger warning. Molly is first introduced when she's leaving class and a random white woman, Nomi, is beating up her car. When Molly tries to pull her off, Nomi fights back and then throws up. Molly decides to check to see if she's alright, and Nomi fights her again before running into the street. Molly then saves her life and then buys her some food. Of course, in Nomi fashion, she wastes that same food that Molly just bought for her, and then she offers Nomi a place to stay. Molly's life is barely explored, but when we do see glimpses, it shows that she seems to only go to school and work. It's clear that Molly is passionate about clothes and fashion because not only does she excel in her classwork, I got an A! But she makes clothes at home in her spare time. She can even look at an outfit at a store and make the exact replica. She's shown to be kind, supportive, and talented. It was also never discussed if Molly had family or even any other friends, which leads me to believe that maybe the only person she has is herself and now Nomi. Remember that this is a direct correlation of the definition of a black best friend. We don't know if she has any family or friends. On that fateful night when they fell in love, met, Molly saw someone like herself and thought that she finally found someone who could understand her. Nomi was alone in Vegas too. Annoyingly, this part of my analysis is strictly hypothetical because Molly's backstory was never explored. I don't know if she was actually lonely, I'm just assuming. The movie jumps forward 6 weeks and we get to see where Molly lives. Knowing that she's juggling working backstage at the shows, going to school, and making time outside of all of that to work on her own personal designs, it's so damn frustrating to know what happens next. One day before work, Molly invites Nomi to work with her and even tells her to wear one of her custom dresses. Nomi enjoys the show and even gets to meet the lead, Crystal. When Crystal insults Nomi,
if it's at the cheetah, it's not dancing, I know that much.
She decides to throw caution to the wind and yell at Crystal before storming off. Molly has to then apologize for Nomi's actions before she runs after her. Then when Molly tells her how much she needs that job and how wrong she is, Nomi yells an apology. Not gives it, but yells it.
I'm sorry!
She then proceeds to sulk, which then makes Molly feel bad. Why should she feel bad? I don't know. Molly then offers her a night out even though Nomi has to work. It's so frustrating to watch because somehow Nomi made herself the victim in the situation, opposed to feeling guilty about putting Molly's job in jeopardy. Gina Ravera, the actress who starred as Molly, explained something similar years ago during an interview. It's the Hattie McDaniel role, where you take care of the needs of the white woman and you don't have a storyline of your own. It was a difficult decision for me, but it was also one of the first movies I was ever going to do. A lot of Black girls have to do that job, and I had to start somewhere. When James is introduced, he is so mesmerized by Nomi's dancing. While he's working as a bouncer, he starts to dance with Nomi and explains how he can teach Nomi because she has so much potential. Because he criticized her dancing, she kicks him, which causes him to bump into someone, which then causes a fight. He then loses his job and decides to bail her out because she's just so damn special. Even though he seems to have lived in Vegas for what seems like a long time, he thinks that he can't find anyone who dances like her. When he shows up at Molly's home, he tells her that she has that it factor. Throughout the film, James' character constantly referred to women as bitches, and he was constantly shown how controlling and jealous he is over Nomi, which I might add he just met 24 hours earlier. Even after he got a new job as a bellhop, when he sees Nomi leaving the hotel, he not only stops working, but he actually quits his job so that he can continue to talk to her. While he is cussing out his boss, Nomi is seen smiling in the background. She also has a similar expression when he got into a fight at the club. It's like she enjoys seeing how much power she has over him. Even after he gets fired, his only concern is her because he immediately says that he wants to cheer her up and get her something to eat. When James and Nomi have a falling out, he then performs his show with a girl he's been sleeping with named Penny. Nomi arrives as soon as James is getting booed off the stage, and the writers really want us to believe that without Nomi as the lead dancer, the show would always fail. That is so hard to believe because Vegas is known to have dancers and entertainers who have been training their whole life. The fact that James couldn't find anyone he thought was as talented as Nomi was not realistic whatsoever. This notion throughout the movie that Nomi was like no other really made these Black characters seem imaginative because this would never happen in real life. Two people would never become obsessed with someone within minutes of knowing them. Even after the performance, Nomi told him it was good, but he denies that notion and hints that it's because she wasn't in it. He then insults Penny's dancing and orders her to get him a drink.
Yeah, get me a beer, bitch.
His story ends with him and Penny becoming engaged because she's pregnant. He claims that he has given up dancing because he failed his last performance. James will end up married to Penny, who he says he does not love, work at a grocery store, and never live out his dream. And this movie wants me to believe that it's all because Nomi wasn't in his routine. It's clear from the very beginning that James was passionate about dancing. On his walls, he had drawings and images of dancers. He trained at Alvin Ailey. Like, come on, let's be for real. So the notion that he could easily give up on his dream because he had one bad show just isn't believable, especially when he thinks his show only failed because Nomi wasn't in it, even though he's a well-trained dancer himself. But also, he could have given up because he has a baby on the way, but his reason was unclear. The hardest thing to figure out is what his character was used for. He didn't seem to make her better or have those expositional conversations, and he also wasn't full of wisdom. I think James' character was strictly there to praise her and tell her how great she is. At every turn, he always told her how she was too good for this and perfect for that. Even the way his story ended, it was like without her, his career would be nothing. To create a whole character just to praise Nomi was drastic. There are so many other ways they could have shown how good of a dancer Nomi was, opposed to having James say it every scene they had together.
You got more natural talent when you dance than anybody I've ever seen. I've seen a lot of dancers. You burn when you dance.
It feels like they're trying to convince us with words instead of action.
Molly, in a sense, is a bit of a sacrificial lamb. For Nomi to find out her true essence and her real beauty by standing up for herself and her friends and what she truly believes in. So there's an exchange the two of them make. It's sweet.
Now for the part that I was dreading. Let's talk about the ending. Throughout the movie, they showed that Molly had a huge crush on a musician named Andrew Carver. Even though she had a slight distrust about what Nomi might have did on the stairs, she attended the party anyway. After Nomi introduces Molly to Andrew, he takes her upstairs. This is when Andrew and two other men brutally assault Molly. Of course, I'm not going to show any of that footage. It's just too much. I don't know the reason why the director decided to show that scene, but it was actually unnecessary and it could have been easily implied. The reason why he actually let this happen to Molly's character was once again because of Nomi. The creators of this movie wanted you to root for Nomi. Of course, she's the protagonist. Due to the way people talk down to her and demean her throughout the movie, we're supposed to root for her and hope and pray that she makes it out on top. When the lifestyle consumes Nomi and she pushes Crystal down the stairs, now Nomi's the villain. Now you can't root for her because she's just like Crystal, the person we're supposed to hate. Even though there are thousands of different ways they could have redeemed Nomi, they decided that the best way is to throw her best friend under the bus. Let's sacrifice Molly so that Nomi can redeem herself. She can be the savior for Molly. Without Nomi, where would Molly be? Not only was the scene horrific for viewers, but it was also traumatic for the actress. During the same interview, Ravera explained, when you do a scene like that, your body doesn't know it's not real. I don't know if I would have taken this movie if I had understood that. She explained how that scene took 9 hours to film, but she took the scene seriously. I took the rape scene very seriously because when you see on film, you know you're representing people who have lived through it. And frankly, I thought I'm going to do this scene so that the girl who goes to the party and gets asked to the room doesn't do it. I was willing to do the scene for that person because this is a real moment in the world, unfortunately. Women are victims of this violence. Using such a serious moment and not even giving the movie enough space to discuss and explore this type of trauma was some bullshit, in my opinion. What makes this scene even more terrible was due to the plot point not being fully thought out. So you're telling me that after Molly is assaulted and she walks out in front of the crowd, no one in the party would talk to the police about what they saw that night? They were clear as day flirting in a corner minutes before she went upstairs with him, and you're telling me no one saw it? Maybe people are keeping what they saw to themselves because hundreds of people are loyal to Andrew. But I find this somewhat hard to believe. Even if the people that are invited as guests are loyal to Andrew because they are in the same social circle, what about the people who work at the event? Even after Nomi is confronted about her secret and blackmailed into not calling the police, say if Nomi did what Zach wanted, what about Molly? Who says that when she wakes up that she isn't going to tell the police everything? Did they just assume that Nomi had that much power over Molly that she would persuade her not to tell? It's like they took the option or even the idea that Molly would make the decision herself and gave Nomi all the power over Molly's body. Even though she was barely conscious after being there overnight, I expected her to wake up and demand a kid. The way Molly and James' character put Nomi on a pedestal was so problematic. The idea that they were so magnetized and protective over her was just too far-fetched. The fact that Molly, a normal, sane black woman, would take in a random woman who she just met is not believable whatsoever. The same can be said for James. He met her that night at the club, and now he quits his job just to talk to her, make dance numbers specifically for her after 30 seconds of interaction, and even bailed her out of jail? It just doesn't make sense to me. The way they were both so disposable and misused by Nomi is upsetting. Even though some would consider this movie, well, terrible, these Black characters deserve more than to be used the way they were. I want to say thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to hear what you think again in the comments, of course. I appreciate everyone who watched it. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and I will see you next time.